Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting, I'm Mai. In the previous part, we went through some truly grueling moments of daily hustle under the early morning heat, 35 degrees C, from sharing a single banh mai with my small dog, Boy, to that suffocating confrontation at the bustling marketplace corner. And now, as the table saw begins to roar at Mr. Ray, Hong's Wood Workshop, a chain of even more punishing and tragic challenges is waiting for me ahead. Let's continue this journey with me to see the raw hidden realities of a poor laborer's life. If you empathize with and love the two of us, please don't forget to hit like and follow the channel right now to give me more motivation and never miss the next stories. And now I invite everyone to listen to the next part of the story. The mechanical thudding of the tables are slammed into Emmy's eardrums like a relentless sequence of acoustic torture. Dust from the rotten dried branches began to merge with the foul, pungent odor of the dead fish water from the market this morning, forming a thin, sticky, and itchy film that clung tightly to her skin. Fine wood dust swirled through the air, filling every single pore and creeping into her throat, making each breath feel choked and burning, as if she were swallowing hot coals. Her hands had lost all sensation a long time ago. Her knuckles were stiff, trembling in waves from the constant kickback of the cold iron blade as it bit into the old, bone-dry wood fibers. Yet, she was not allowed to stop for even a single second. The boss, Mr. Hung, a man with squinted eyes and a smile that always carried a hint of calculation, would occasionally step out from the front house, teacup in hand, his sharp gaze cutting across the pile of trimmed wood branches. Every time his shadow stretched across the ground, Mai's heart would race with fear. In this workshop, a delay or a single cut of the wrong size resulted not just in harsh scoldings, but in total rejection. He could fire her on the spot. And for someone with no degree and no family like Mai, losing this job meant pushing both herself and her dog, Boy, to the absolute brink. The sharp iron blade spun at thousands of revolutions per minute, emitting terrifying, ghostly shrieks. Me watched the dry chunks of wood drop beneath the machine stand. They formed the skeleton for luxurious artificial decorative trees. She knew that, after being packaged by Mr. Hung, these items would be listed on Amazon or Etsy under a premium eco-friendly label, selling for $10 per small branch. $10. Meanwhile, spending the entire day exposing herself to this suffocating workshop, gambling her fingers and her lungs, she and Nam only received a $6 daily wage. A bitter contrast welled up, choking Mi's throat. $6 was just a few sips of water or a luxury toy for a wealthy city kid. But here it was the price of blood, sweat, and the very dignity of two impoverished workers. Hey! Me. Focus. If you cut it off by even a centimeter, I'll dock half your day's pay. Mr. Hong's loud shout from behind made Mai jump in panic. Right at that moment, the accumulated exhaustion and the chill from her stained t-shirt made Mi's head spin. With a momentary lapse of focus, the spinning blade grazed the edge of her worn, torn cloth glove, slicing a long gash. A sharp burning pain instantly jolted her awake. Blood leaked out, staining a patch of the glove, bright red, before mixing with the wood dust into a thick, dark brown paste. Me bit her lip hard to suppress a cry. She quickly hid her injured hand behind her back, tremblingly continuing to push the wood block into the machine. If Mr. Hung saw her injury. He would use her inability to work as an excuse to cut her pay for the day. A tear of utter helplessness spilled over, hot and heavy, blending into the stream of sweat rolling down her chin, before dropping into the gray pile of sawdust beneath her feet. She wanted to give up, to throw off this glove and flee from this stifling workshop, but the image of the empty rice jar back at her room and the hungry eyes of her dog, Boy, anchored her to the raw reality. The clock struck 12 noon, signaling the arrival of a rare resting period. The summer heat of Hanoi had hit its peak at 42 degrees Celsius. The air felt completely condensed, thick, and HP, like a giant crematorium furnace. The concrete ground outside the yard was patchworked with glaring, blinding sunlight, scalding hot enough to melt the crude rubber soles of Mi's sandals. The dry branches scattered across the yard radiated a scorching, parching heat, looking as though a single spark could ignite a catastrophic fire. Mi and Nam dragged their exhausted, aching footsteps over to Mr. Hung's side house for lunch. This was their only privilege, a basic subsidized meal. Inside the old brick house, the atmosphere was hardly any better. An ancient ceiling fan whirred clack-clack overhead, doing nothing but pushing waves of hot air around. On a stained aluminum tray, placed in the middle of the room, sat their lunch, a plate of faded, yellowed, boiled morning glory, a bowl of sour broth with pickled dragontamalon, a few bitter pieces of wild bamboo shoots, and a plate of bland, congealed fatty pork. Despite being starved to the bone, after a morning of exhausting labor, Mi felt a lump in her throat just looking at the food. Nam, on the other hand, a 16-year-old kid, as thin as a skeleton, just buried his face in his bowl, shoveling rice down ravenously. Poverty and hunger had stripped Nam of the right to be picky or disgusted. Yeah, Sister Mi. We need strength for the afternoon. Mr. Hung said once the machine is fixed, we have to work overtime. Nam said, his voice raspy from dehydration. Mi nodded, trying to pick up her bamboo chopsticks with a trembling hand. She and Nam had only managed a few bites when Mr. Hung walked in, slamming a stack of bills onto the table. He cleared his throat, looking at Mi with a calculating gaze, and said, the workshop's electricity and water bills went up too much this month, and you guys are wearing out the equipment. Starting next month, I'm docking 10% of your wages to cover operational costs. Mr. Hung's words felt like a bucket of ice water splashed straight into Mi's face. 10% of $6? To him, it was just a few stalks of vegetables, but to Mi, it was medicine for her bleeding hand. It was a few extra cups of rice for the days running out of food. The sheer injustice choked her throat, making it impossible to swallow the dry rice. Mi dropped her chopsticks and stood up to argue, but Nam's pleading, fearful look held her back. The boy gently shook his head, his eyes showing complete helplessness. She knew that if she spoke up, they would both be thrown out onto the street immediately. Suffocating with emotion, Mi sat back down, letting her tears flow backward into her heart, bitter and painful. He could only bow her head and force down the bowl of rice soaked in vegetable water, swallowing the humiliation of a poor soul's existence. 6 o'clock in the evening. The table saw engine finally fell silent. The afternoon shift, which felt like it dragged on for centuries under Mr. Hung's tyrannical supervision, came to an end. Mi took her meager $6 wage from the boss' hand, crumpled bills soaked in toxic sweat and wood dust. She walked out of the workshop with a completely broken body, her muscles aching so intensely that every step felt as if thousands of needles were piercing the soles of her feet. The wound on her hand, left without proper dressing, had begun to swell, throbbing with a dull ache. Yet Mi decided not to return to her rented room immediately. Her 8-square-meter room with its metal roof had undoubtedly spent the day baking under the sun, turning into a miniature cremation chamber, so hot and suffocating that it was impossible to breathe. She needed an escape, at least until night fell and the ground cooled down. She dragged her feet to the green park near her neighborhood. As sunset descended, painting a corner of the Hanoi sky in a pale, fading golden light, the park gradually filled up. The footsteps of joggers, the playful laughter of children, the whispers of couples on stone benches. Everything created an ordinary, peaceful scene that felt incredibly luxurious to Mighty. She rewarded herself with a tiny, cheap pleasure, a cone of ice cream bought from a street vendor at the park gate. He picked a bench hidden behind the shadow of an old tree, where a rare late-afternoon breeze blew through. She slowly scooped each cold spoonful, letting the sweet, numbing sensation melt on her tongue, trying to use that coldness to extinguish the fire of exhaustion that had burned through her soul all day. But the ice cream melted too quickly under the residual heat of the late afternoon, much like her tiny hopes slipping through her fingers. Mi looked at the streams of ice cream running down her rough fingers, stained with wood dust and dried blood, and a hollow loneliness welled up inside her. Around her, happy families walked hand in hand, and children were pampered with expensive toys by their parents. Meanwhile, at 22, her greatest asset was $6 earned with blood and sweat, and a bleak future with no way out. The cruel contrast made Maya want to bury her face in her knees and cry her heart out, washing away all the burdens she was forced to carry alone on her shoulders. It was completely dark when Maya stepped out of the park. With a heart heavy with worries and a total depletion of body and mind, she stopped before a small convenience store along the road. Holding the $6 wage in her hand, she hesitated for a while before deciding to use a third of it to buy a good can of dog food for Boy, while buying only a single pack of cheap instant noodles for herself. To many, the idea of someone so dirt poor she could barely feed herself. Dog might seem foolish and eccentric, but Boy was everything. Boy was the only thread connecting her to the human world, the single reason keeping her from giving up and sinking into the abyss of despair. Mi walked back to her rented room, hidden deep within the dark alley. The flimsy wooden door creaked open, and the hot air trapped throughout the day blasted into her face immediately, stifling and suffocating to the point of breathlessness. The 8-square-meter room lacked air conditioning, containing only an old fan whirring loudly, rattling like an aging monster gasping for breath. Everything was as simple and cluttered as before. A single bed pushed against the wall, a few worn clothes hanging on a rusty wire, and a small kitchen corner with a few cheap plastic dishes. Yet, the moment Mai stepped inside, Boy rushed out instantly. The small dog wagged his tail frantically, barking in joy, continuously, rubbing his wet head against her calloused, injured hands. Mi collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, hugging Boy tightly to her chest. The tears she had held back through the agonizing day finally broke free, streaming down her cheeks and soaking into the small dog's soft fur. She cried for the injustice of Mr. Wood. Home, cried for the bleeding wound on her hand, and cried for her painfully grueling life of survival. Boy, I'm so tired. I really don't know how much longer I can take this. Mai whispered through her choked sobs, her shoulders shaking violently. As if understanding his owner's pain, Boy used his warm tongue to lick the tears from Mi's face, whining softly and nudging his small head against her chest to comfort and shelter her. Mi looked at the food poured into Boy's bowl, watching him eat happily, and a strange sensation of warmth suddenly rose within her. In this massive and cold city, at least she still had a home to return to, a completely loyal life waiting for her regardless of poverty. Tonight, a massive storm was forecasted for Hanoi. Thunder began to rumble deeply from the distant horizon, and strong gusts of wind started to hiss through the crevices of the room, shaking the old metal roof into a sequence of dry, rattling songs. Mi sat on the single bed, holding Boy tightly in her arms, her eyes staring blankly out the window, where the darkness of the alley was being swallowed by flashes of bright lightning. Tomorrow, the 42-degree heat and Mr. Hung's sharp iron blade were still waiting for her. The daily hustle would continue to drain the young girl's strength, but looking into Boy's clear eyes, Mi knew she wasn't allowed to fall. He had to keep carrying the weight. She had to keep living, for the sake of the single bond of love. And that is the entire story of a raw, yet resilient day of survival in my life. Amidst the chaos, hardships, and injustices of the world out there, I realize that as long as this tiny rented room remains lit, and Boy is still faithfully waiting at the door, every storm outside can be braved. Thank you all so much for listening and walking with me through these ups and downs of life's footage. If my story could touch your emotions or give you a little bit of motivation to keep moving through your own stormy days, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to catch the next episodes. Your support is the greatest encouragement for a young girl like me to stand firm on the grueling path of new sin ahead. Goodbye, and see you all in the next videos.